Hello student, I am Professor Gagresam from Computer Department. Today we will see the third practical of Advanced Java Programming. Practical name is write a program to design a simple calculator with the use of grid layout. In this practical, we have to perform one simple calculator by the help of a grid layout. We already know that what is the grid layout we see in theoretical part. Now we move to next point, that is a practical significance. The practical significance for this practical is a layout manager automatically arrange your controls within a window. In layout manager, we have to not define any areas or any control. The layout manager automatically arrange all the controls within that window. While it is possible to lay out Java controls by hand, you generally want, it is a very commonplace to manually lay out a large number of components. In layout manager, you can add number of components as well as the layout for these components is large. So you can easily add components in layout manager. Next, the practical skill. To develop any standalone application, we need some practical skill. So practical skills for this practical is able to apply a different layout to apply frame and panel. Here we have to add layouts to our applet or our frame or our panel window. Next practical skill is that able to demonstrate the use of a different types of layout manager. Next we will see that one CO, that is course outcome. The course outcome is develop programs using GUI framework of AWT and Swing components. Now we will move to next part, that is a minimum theoretical background. The minimum theoretical background for this practical is layout manager is a facility that determines how components should be arranged when they are added to the container. Here we have added components to that layout manager. Then layout manager will be arranged by the size or by the actual specification for these components. For example, we have to add some buttons or we have to add some radio buttons, checkbox, etc. Then layout manager will arrange these components by the size, as per the size. Layout manager is an interface that is implemented by all the classes of a layout manager. There are following classes that represents the layout manager. We will see that the types of a layout managers. The first type is flow layout, that is a by default layout. Next is a grid layout, then border layout, then card layout and grid back layout. Today we will see the grid layout. Okay, understand the default layout for different containers such as applet, frame or panel. Grid layout is used to make a bunch of components equal in a size and display them in the requested number of rows and columns. In layout manager, we divide our screen or our components in rows and columns. For example, this is my screen. So we have to make these screens, or we have to part these screens in rows and columns. So we will divide these screens in rows and columns. One components display in each rectangle. Now we will see some constructors for this grid layout. The first constructor is a default constructor, that is a grid layout. This constructor will creates a grid layout with one column per a component in a row. This constructor will create one column for one component in a row. Next, we will see second constructor, that is a grid layout with parameters. We are passing parameters like rows and columns. So here it creates a grid layout with the given rows and columns, but no gaps between the components. In this second constructor, there is no gap between your rows and columns. For example, suppose this is my first rows, that is first grid component, and this is my second component, right? So second constructor, your second constructor, this constructor will create rows and columns, but there is no gap between these two. Means this is this we will see that there is one gap, but when we use this, then it will be no gap between these two. So it will be like it will like this. So there is no gap between these two. Now we move to next, that is third constructor. In that we passing parameters like rows and columns, and also we pass horizontal gap and vertical gap, that is HG gap and V gap. So it creates a grid layout with the given rows and columns along with horizontal and vertical gap. If we give a set layout null, the default layout is disabled. Then we have to use set bounds method to lay out the components. If I am giving the null values for this layout, then it will be disabled. So we have to use a set bounds method for this grid layout third constructor. Okay. Next, resources required. We already know which resources we require for a practical. So I will skip this. Now I am moving to the next, that is your actual program. The program is write a program to design a simple calculator with the use of grid layout. Here we have to perform a program or develop one program. In that we use a grid layout, and this grid layout is specially used for to design a simple calculator with the help of grid layout. Okay, so for this program we need two packages. The first packages is a very known package, that is import java.awt, and next package is import java.applet. So this package for AWT and this package for applet window. Now we using applet, so that's why we have to use a applet code. For this applet code we have to pass value, that is your practical name and width and height. Why we are giving width and height? You know that when we running our applet, then this applet window will display in this specification, that is width and height. Next we have to close our applet window. Now we have to create our class. The class name is a practical 3. I mean giving my name for practical is practical number 3. So we have to extend our practical or class name into applet. So we extend it into our applet. Now we use initialize method, that is public void init. Next, open bracket, and in open bracket I am passing one value for a font, that is set font equal to, or in bracket, new font sans serif comma font dot bold and 24. Here you can give any font name, for example Times New Roman or Arial, any can font or any can font you can given this font values. So I am using font dot bold. Here you can also give italic or bold or regular, and you can use as per your size, that is 24, or you want to 16, you want to 10, you can give it. Now we are using a grid layout, so that's why we have to create a grid layout object. So I am creating grid layout. The object name is GL and new grid layout, and here I am giving values, that is 4,3, that is my rows and columns. So we are using this constructor, that is number of rows and columns. Now after that we have to set layout, that is set layout by passing values of grid layout object. So we already created here object, so I am passing GL value, that is to my grid layout or set layout. After that, here I am using one for loop. This for loop is for creating buttons or creating the rectangles in a grid layout. So I am creating here 9 grid layouts, or 9, my screen is divided into 9 parts, that is equal to 9. So I am using this for loop, integer I equal to 1, I is less than equal to 9, and I plus plus. So here your for loop is working, and after that the I value is incremented up to 9. After that it will be stopped. Now when the buttons is add, then the numbers will be given as a 0, 1, 2, 3 or 9 up to 9. So here I value will be given that value. After that I am using 3 buttons. These 3 buttons for one for multiplication symbol, then 0 and hash. So here we are creating one simple calculator. So that's why for this simple practical or simple calculator we need these values. So I am giving one button here, button creating, and the object name BT1, and button name is this symbol, that is multiplication. After that 0 and hash. After that we have to add this button to our applet window or to our main method. So we are using add BT1, BT2 and BT3. After that these 3 buttons will be added. This is our program. Now we will run our program with the help of command prompt. So I am using command prompt to run my program. My program is D folder, in D folder. That's why I am using path as a D. After that I am compiling my program with the help of JavaScript command, and here I am giving my practical name, that is practical 3, and compiling my program. After successfully compilation, now we can run our program with the help of command applet viewer. Now you will see that our program is run successfully, and here the output is given. In this I am using for loop for these numbers, that is 1 to 9. So my window is divided in 4 rows and 3 columns. That's why there are 4 columns, and there are 4 rows and 3 columns. So starting from 1 to 9, this is this section for numbers, and I am using 3 numbers, that is 3 numbers, that is for multiplication, then 0 and hash. So these numbers or these signs are used on a button. So this is my first button, BT1. Then I'm using button 2, that is 0, and BT3. In that way, we perform a practical on calculator. That is a simple calculator with the help of grid layout. In the next video, we will see next practical. Okay, so we will see in next video, next practical. Thank you.